Welcome to the latest edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Cassidy Fortin. Collaboration is a key element in professional life, which is why we're here today to talk with Cal State Fullerton professor Teresa Nguyen and USC professor Roth on their recent collaboration for the second edition of the book, Compelling Conversations, Vietnam. Thank you both for joining us here today. I am very glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Oh yeah, of course. How about we just start with you telling us a little bit about yourselves?
Well, currently I teach here. I'm a full-time faculty at Cal State Fullerton. I teach over in University Extended Education, so my student population is actually international students. So I have students from all over the world, many countries, and I help them matriculate into the university.
Very nice. That's really cool. And then Eric?
I teach at the University of Southern California and work with international graduate students and try to help them find the pleasures and identify some perils of both academic writing and public speaking in English.
Very nice. That's awesome too. And you're the one who actually started this whole Compelling Conversation series. Can you talk a little bit about how and why you started it?
Sure, it's kind of an odd story. So I was working, I had a wonderful conversation class for 3 years at Santa Monica Community College. And the department unfortunately closed. And so I thought I had a job in the writing program at USC in the fall. So I didn't want to go teach abroad. And on the other hand, I wasn't certain of that because it depended on enrollment. So what I thought I should do is look over my lessons and kind of remember this wonderful class. And so out of that, going back and organizing some prior lessons from the conversation class came Compelling Conversations. I didn't think it was going to be a series, by the way. I thought of this as more as like writing as therapy, and it took me, I proceeded to join USC. But then I worked on it during breaks for the next year and a half. It was a nice project. But I didn't feel that urgency to get it done, and I certainly had no idea. But I've been really pleasantly surprised because the conversation lessons from a small classroom in Santa Monica with students from dozens of countries ended up reaching audiences. And now we've had people use the book in over 50 countries.
That's really great.
So we're kind of pleased with that. Then I ended up going to Vietnam as a consultant for a language school. Mm-hmm. And when I returned to the States and I looked back on it, I thought, what would have been better and smarter is if I had been able to incorporate a lot of wonderful things about Vietnam rather than just taking out from the original book. Okay. And so that was the genesis of the first version. And I had a friend who said, why don't you try to get a job every summer in a different country? And maybe you could get a book, find a local collaborator and get a book. Well, I kind of thought that's a beautiful vision, but I didn't have the ability to implement it. So I came back, continued my work at SC, and then other friends came back from their trips and teaching abroad and then would bring projects to me. So a good friend brought a proposal to work on a book for Japan. That's where that came from. My own interest in helping immigrants and refugees here led to the Compelling American Conversations. So that's where the series comes from.
That's amazing. Sounds like a job I'd like to have, traveling all around, helping out people. It's really cool. And then, Teresa, what was your first experience like with Compelling Conversations? Had you heard about it before you started collaborating?
Yeah, so actually I was teaching in Vietnam at that time. Okay. And they have a popular bookstore there called Phahasa. And so I was just going there, and I remember seeing this book. And then we met at an international conference over at USC, and I saw him, and then he was like, oh yeah, I'm the author of this book. And I was like, what? I recognize this cover from somewhere. And I was like, oh, it hit me. That's when I saw it. Like I saw it at the bookstore in Vietnam. And so I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. Like I didn't know, and I can put a name to someone, to a book. And and so that's how we connected. Like I recognized that, and then we met again this past summer at another international conference. I forgot
Spring.
Spring at
Baltimore.
You make a good team.
I was like, yes. I think in Baltimore, and then we connected again, and I was like, was that when I approached you for the revised edition?
You mentioned that it could use a new edition.
Okay.
Yes.
You were subtle at that point.
This actually leads right into the next question. How did you decide to collaborate?
Well, I actually approached Eric. No, so I saw the first book, and I like the topic. I like how it focused on conversation. I don't know if you know, but Vietnamese learners, one of their phonological production is actually not as great as others. So like their pronunciation, they have a lot of errors. They make a lot of errors. And so I wanted to focus on that. Yeah, good mistakes, like we would like to call them.
Okay, very nice.
And so I like how this book was focused on conversations, right? It's very timely. It has very timely topics, and like it just focused on the production of oral communication. And that was the focus that I wanted to. And what was even more was that it focused on the Vietnamese population, which is, my roots. Yes. So I had all the aspect that I wanted to do it, but with the current book, I felt it could be more, and so I wanted to collaborate with Eric on the second edition, adding a lot more elements to it to make it more relevant, to make it more resourceful, to make it more beneficial to the students.
I mean, Teresa came in with all kinds of great, wonderful ideas that we've incorporated. One thing is, that conference that I heard her speak at, she was talking about using EdTech tools and apps in the classroom, and it was an amazing presentation. And it was near the end of the conference, and there were a room of maybe 60 tired teachers after several days of conference, and she and her friend Annie Tran gave just a dynamic presentation on how we should welcome the smartphones in the classroom, and gave a lot of examples of how you could do things that we've traditionally wanted to do, and now we're really empowering students to take more responsibility for their own learning. And there are a lot of things that we can work on here. So this book incorporates a lot of those elements. And the original book was just focused mostly on fluency. And now this second edition, we really focus also on accuracy with great depth. We also did more on vocabulary enhancement, and as we talked about a little earlier, technology has changed a lot of aspects. So even if you have a presentation, now it's so easy to record it, post it on a class Blackboard or learning management system, and students can watch it over and over and over again. And that's wonderful. So a lot of the techniques and exercises we have now use this technology.
That's amazing.
Because I've been teaching for about 10 years now, and I remember when I first started teaching, like a lot of my colleagues were like, oh yeah, I take away their cell phones, like when they walk in, I have a bucket, and I tell them to put their cell phones in the bucket, and I'm just like, oh my God, what year is this? You know what I mean? I was just utterly shocked. And so like my interests for EdTech came from that. I'm like, well, if they're always on their phones anyways, like why not utilize it into the classroom, right? Instead of forbidding them, like you can't, because with students nowadays, like the more you tell them no, the more they want to do it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so like, I mean, if they're not texting up here, they're gonna text under here anyways, and you can see that, but they don't think that. So it's kind of like had a student the other day, he was texting in class, like, what are you doing? Looking at my shoe. I was like, no, no. So the idea of me, or my interest of EdTech came from that. Like, why not utilize it? And so that's when I started my research. So a lot of my presentations and my research and my things that I do talks about different apps that we could utilize into the classroom that can engage our students, as well as marry the two, so that we just can have a very productive classroom. Very nice. Productive class.
And then what was it like collaborating with each other? I'm not sure who all you've collaborated with before, but how is Teresa a little bit different?
Well, Teresa, brings far greater knowledge of technology, and that was really a pleasant and a really nice, wonderful give and take. I did not know Teresa as well as my previous collaborators, and I had kind of decided that I only wanted to work with people who were very serious, successful educators, and she qualifies.
Good to
know, right?
And So it was nice. We met maybe a half dozen times during that, but most of the time we're using technology. So we're having a nice conversation in person, but it's being recorded. Likewise, we did a lot of conversations on the phone. We used a lot of Dropbox. It's very easy to edit each other's work now. We were able to bring in and share early drafts with friends around the world who were interested and had experience teaching in Vietnam. So that it's a nice possibility that just technologically, it would have been very difficult for us to collaborate the way we did 10 years ago. And that's beautiful. So it's been very successful, and I've learned a lot, and yeah, it's nice when you learn. I mean, one of the open secrets is a lot of teachers go into education because they like learning and they stay curious. So it's been a real pleasure from my end.
Yeah. We're good there. Yeah, no, it's been a great collaboration. Like, he has a lot of great ideas, and he actually supports all my crazy ideas, and I think that's very helpful. And if anything, he kind of we would shoot ideas back and forth, and then it's been very good dialogue. And he's just a great person to work with. There was like I don't know. Yeah, it's been really great collaboration.
There's been some generational things too.
I didn't want to mention that. but I appreciate, because as you know, this is my first textbook that I'm writing, and he's had many textbooks before, so I appreciate like that knowledge that he can come in, and he's given me a lot of great perspective and ideas on, it's a great foundation to work off of. Yes, and I think going back to that Ed Talk, what I like about this textbook is that we incorporate a lot of apps into the textbook just because we want to focus on student autonomy. We want our students to be independent learners, self-learners, and so there are apps in there like Kahoot and Quizlet. So there's self-learning tools that our students can use, and coming after that, we're also creating YouTube videos to go along with the pronunciation error. So like, I know people want to do CDs nowadays, but my students don't do that. They never touch the CD that's attached in the back. So we wanted a multimedia platform to go along with the book, and so we want to develop YouTube videos along with this that could help our students, and they can watch it and learn it visually.
Very nice. So you guys seem to have really been able to pull off of each other's strengths and everything. So that's really great.
Yeah, and sometimes she would show me a photo, and I'd be like, what is this photo of? What am I looking at? What is the connection between this photo and the text? And, it was very beautiful, very poetic, but, I don't get it.
And they're like, oh, Eric.
Well, it's good to know you guys also have fun working with each other. I know you guys were able to go to Vietnam together. Tell me a little bit about what that was like and what you did over there.
Well, we actually went to Vietnam separately.
Oh, okay.
So I was there as a consultant, and then I basically played principal for the summer and tried to revitalize a curriculum to bring in more communicative methods and bring in more serious educators into a private high school. And I was there from the summer of 2009 primarily.
Yeah, and I went back to teach Vietnam for a year at an institution called ILA, so International Language Academy. And so it's they have many, many branches all over Vietnam. And so I was just there.
Very nice.
Well, and you taught a extremely wide range of learners.
Yes.
And that's not easy to do.
Thank you. Yeah, but I think one of my most memorable experience was teaching I was teaching business English to a group of Vietnamese learners who were preparing to be part of the hotelier business, so the service industry. And so that was kind of nice. Like that was kind of like my first introduction to teaching business English to those that are ready for the workforce. And I think that's a little bit different than for academia, because their conversation and dialogue is more relevant to our everyday, usage, and I brought that into this book, because this book because it's compelling conversations. We want them to prepare for conversations not just in academia, but in their daily lives, like when they're going out and meeting Americans and matriculating to, and interacting with Americans, and understanding not just the language aspect, but also the culture aspect. And that's what we brought into this book as well. We brought in like a culture corner, because we think with language you can't just learn the language. You learn language and the culture in itself. They're intertwined. And so that's another benefit that we found with this book that we've added to that I really like.
And, you know, the core focus are for Vietnamese learners of English in the United States or want to study in the United States or study in Canada. So that thinking about audience is a key part of this.
Okay. And then your collaboration seems to have worked really well. What advice would you have for people who are interested in collaborating with others? How would they go about doing that, initiating that conversation?
This is going to sound awful, but use Uncle Google, she would say, and really know your partner.
Okay.
So that when you engage, you are not asking, did you graduate from, but why did you choose to? So just like in general, our philosophy is conversation should be meaningful and focused. And part of that is being prepared for the moment.
Right.
So I certainly say understand who your potential partner is. I've had some mixed collaborations in the past, and I think a lot of times it was my overestimating the ability of people, perhaps slightly biased by affection of friendship or other things. And I think that it's useful to take a step back. And if you did not know this person, and you just knew them from what you find online or from what you heard of them in their readings or their writings, what would you say? And I think that's really important. And I know that sounds kind of cold, and I don't mean it to be cold, but I think that it's worth really knowing who your partners are.
No, that make a really strong point right there.
The second thing I think is being very clear about expectations and who does what when, and I think that deadlines are useful. This book has taken us longer than we had originally thought, but part of it is that we kept kind of upping our possibilities for the book. We could do this and we could do that, and to some degree, projects are. Books need to be seen and read by others outside. And so you kind of end that project, but then you work on next projects. And I think that, we feel very good about that.
Very nice. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, I want to say, so flexibility, I think it's also good with your partners, as well as patience, because there are times that, I think you have to be understanding for the other person, to say maybe a situation came up and they can't meet that deadline or something like that. So I think that would be helpful. And another thing I wanted to say to everyone is just like, if you want a collaboration to happen, like whoever it may be, you have to take the initiative, right? Like, I think that's a key element that I think, now that I've published a book, right? Like a lot of, I have a book published. A lot of people are like, "Oh, how did you get that happen? Like, why? Like you look so young, things like that." But it's kind of like, well, if you want it, you have to go get it. You have to take the initiative, right? And so I think,
and she did take the initiative.
And I was like, Eric, you are going to write this book with me. He's like, okay. And a funny story is, like, our vision of the second version totally was not on the same page. But
in the beginning.
Yeah. Like, do you want to share that story?
Well, I was thinking, minor additions and shifts, and I don't think we have the original book here, but it's like 100 pages, and this book is 238 pages, which is probably 40 pages more than we needed, but it's a real tribute that Teresa was like, well, we could do this, and we can do this, and we can do this, and the thing is, those are interesting ideas, and those are good assignments, and they're very valuable. And so while our first book is focused on Vietnamese learners of English, our next book is going to take a lot of these same techniques, a lot of these same concepts, and bring them to the larger immigrant and refugee population in the United States. So it's been a learning experience, and it's been nice. I mean, it's been really, and when we first started talking, I would emphasize it a few times. Knowing limits is a good thing.
Yeah, because he was like, well, Teresa, that's a lot of. You have a lot of ideas. And I'm like, well, it's possible, And
so she really, the saying from Emily Dickinson, the great poet, dwell in possibility, and Teresa really does that. And she's like, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this.
He was like, I thought we're just gonna edit a little bit. Like, no. Yes. So I would encourage, our students, if you want to collaborate with anyone, just don't be shy. Just go out, and don't just come there and say, hey, I want to collaborate with you. Come prepared. Come prepared and say, hey, I have this vision for this, and I'm the best fit for this position because. And that's exactly what I did with Eric. I wasn't just, hey, do a second edition with me. Why? So I have to tell them, hey, I have all these ideas and you want to work with me because, so I think those 3 key elements is essential for the beginning stages of collaboration. But definitely once you're in that collaboration and they say yes, then definitely there is a give and take in there, right? There's definitely that give and take, and you have to be.
And it is fascinating. Just if you've got if you're working either with one person or with a small group of people, it is interesting. It's fascinating, actually, to see how different minds interpret one possibility. So it's nice.
Yeah, just an example of that. There was in the beginning chapter, we have a book. We have a picture of the first chapter is the beginning steps, right? So we chose a picture these 2 shoes. So just the feet, the top shot of these feet, and it was on a rock, kind of just like that. And I was like, oh, how nice. I was like, oh, okay, beginning steps. So you have the top of the shoes and this something back. And he looked at it, he's like, are they gonna jump off a cliff? He was like, this is not beginning steps. This is ending steps. And I was like, oh, I never thought of that. I thought, shoes. Yeah. And so that just goes to show you that, you will never know what the other person is thinking.
Yes.
and so
it's good to have that second perspective on things because you never know who else might interpret it that way.
So we changed the picture. Now there are 2 shoes facing each other with no ending cliff. They're just on land.
Yes. All right, so you touched on this a little bit. What else do you plan on doing together? What's next for the 2 of you?
So now that we finished with this one, but it's only the black and white version, so we have a color version, and then we have an ebook coming out.
Very nice, going into the whole e-tech.
Yes, we want to make it available, so our students don't have to lug around these books. And also, we are planning to have a second version of this one, the Compelling American Conversations, just so that it caters to a broader breadth of our students.
Yeah, and you also have your YouTube channel.
Yes, that's for personal projects. Oh, are you talking about?
No, yeah. Your personal project. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. And so I guess after that, then we'll be doing, I started an ESL channel. An ESL channel. It's bilingual. It's called ESL Garage. And the reason for, or the motivation behind that was that I want to cater to our immigrant students, just so they have accessibility to it, right? So your phone, every phone already has that automatic YouTube channel, right? So I want them to be able to watch and learn English anytime, anywhere, things like that. And they're just fun little short 5-minute videos that they can have. And so it's in English just to cater to everyone, and it's also in Vietnamese to serve our Vietnamese community, which is very relevant to the textbook that we just did.
Really nice.
Yes, and it's called ESL Garage, and it's to help or fine-tune your English skills that you have or you may want to acquire.
It's a really great project. And then is there anything else that you're working on, Eric?
Yeah, well, I'm considering which project to work on. One of the things I've learned is that projects take a lot of time, and you have to be really committed. So I've had educators approach me from India, Taiwan, Brazil, Germany, about the possibility of doing a version for that country. I'm taking the next few weeks and going to, look at the competitive titles and think about, which one of those I want to focus on next. But I like this idea of, I learn a lot about these different countries each time, and that's a nice thing to do. So I'm not sure which collaboration I'll work on next, but I like the fact that people are approaching me with projects.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just showing how much great work you guys are doing.
Thank you.
And then where can we learn more about the series?
So I recommend going to our website, www.compellingconversations.com, and you can download free sample chapters from all of the books, and there are a lot of other related resources. It's as much an education site as it is a book site, and there are a lot lot of fun resources there.
Awesome.
And you can also you can like us on Facebook
Right, exactly. Yes,
at Compelling Conversations VN, right? So we also have the same hashtag, Compelling Conversations VN.
All right.
So yes.
And is there anything else you guys would like to add today?
Well, I think that we're living in a time of exponential technological and social change, and that it's important to remember that just human conversation back and forth between people really matters. And often in school we focus on what do people need to know to survive, and our books are more focused on how to thrive. So maybe you've studied English for 6, 8, 10, 12 years, but you haven't spoken necessarily for that time. And our books are on that odd space between where you've perhaps been in the United States for a number of years, but you're still not comfortable bringing all of your intelligence and creativity into this strange language of English. And so we want to encourage people to have good, compelling conversations in all range, whether it's at work or at parks or with friends or in the classroom.
All right, well, thank you again both for being here today. We're really happy to have you, and I'm sure anyone watching could take something away from what you said, so thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Anytime. Again, if you would like to learn more, you can check out the official website for the textbook as well as the others in the series at compellingconversations.com. Until next time, I am your host, Cassidy Fortin.